Hello, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. Welcome to Wednesday webinars. My name is Andrea Salvadore, and together with my colleague Rosin Hawer, I run the Professional Development Department of the European Foundation Center. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the very first webinar of the Wednesday webinars. This is a series that will be taking place every first Wednesday of each month. And each time we'll be discussing a different topic. So I do invite you to check out our website to see the upcoming topics that we'll be discussing over the following months. So let's start. We are launching the series. I'm very excited to be launching the series on a topic that came up from a publication that landed on our desks a few weeks ago. We liked the colors, we liked the title, and as we started reading through it, we went from nice colors to interesting to wow, and we thought we really want to find out more about this. So we reached out to the creator of this publication called Visualizing Information for Advocacy, and we asked them to be our first guests here on our Wednesday webinars. So the creators behind Visualizing Information for Advocacy is an organization called Tactical Technology Collective, and Tactical Tech has been for over a decade now thinking about and working with data together with design in the field of activism. Technical Tech is a collective of designers, activists, technologists, and researchers who have spent now more than 10 years looking for opportunities to bring design and information technologies into the world of activism. With us today, and I am going to unmute them right now, are two people, Gabby Sobley and Maya Ganesh. Hello, Gabby. Hello, Maya.
Hello, everyone.
Fantastic. We can hear you. Gabby has a master's in human rights, and after a few experiences at Transparency International and The Guardian, has found a way to combine her interest in data and design at Tactical Tech, and she's currently working on two visualizations on issues of protest and housing collapses with groups in Egypt. Whereas Maya, who is talking to us from India right now, has been working with Tactical Tech since 2009 as a consultant first, and then as an activist, as a researcher, as a writer of women's rights, and is now leading the team of the Evidence and Action Program. I am just about to give them the floor. But I would like to remind any participant that if you have any questions, you should feel free to type them in and send them to us. We will have a Q&A moment at the end of the presentations, and we'll be able to answer to all of your questions. But I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to give the floor to Maya, who will start the webinar. Maya, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea and Rosen, for welcoming us and for introducing us. We're really happy to be here and to be talking to you all about the book that we've just written, Visualizing Information for Advocacy. And I have to say, I mean, like, this is all very exciting for me to be doing a webinar from thousands of kilometers away. It really feels like, this really is the information age when, you can kind of share information at so much difference and sort of collapse time and space. Okay, so what we're going to do over the next hour is talk a little bit about the book. I'm going to be taking you through some examples that are in the book, and hopefully sort of send you to the website to look at some more of what we've got on there. We've just started a blog today where we'll be documenting sort of notes on data and design towards perhaps another publication in the future. And then, and in doing that, in talking about the book, I hope to kind of bring up some of the themes around what it means to actually work with visuals in advocacy and introduce some of the best examples we found from around the world. The idea being to inspire other activists and advocacy groups and to inform people about how this can be done or how to start thinking about visuals in advocacy. And my colleague Gabby, who's in England, I think right now, will be taking us through some more of the practical aspects of what does it mean to actually work with data and visualization. And I think we also have 2 polls set up for today. That's right. Yes,
Indeed
Andrea?
we do. So just let me know whenever you are happy to see the answers of our audience.
Okay, fine. So I actually wanted to start off with the first question. And have people already responded to the question, the first one about
I am going to launch the poll right now. I will launch the poll right now, and I am launching it. So here it is. Walk us through it, please.
Yeah. So the question really is, do you believe visuals can influence people? And yes, you have your 4 choices there: yes, no, don't know, maybe. And I guess you'll need a couple of minutes to respond. And Andrea, you will share the findings, right?
I will let you know exactly. We have so far 82% of the participants have voted. Let's give you another 10 seconds to answer. You have almost all voted right now. All right, the votes are in, and 100% of the participants have responded yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I have to say I wasn't really expecting that, because sometimes I personally myself I'm sort of uncertain sometimes about the role of visuals, and I was actually thinking about this today, about what's a visual that I've seen recently that I feel has really changed something on a large scale or has influenced an event. And actually the example that I came up with is of Abu Ghraib, and this was I think about 5 or 6 years ago, when pictures started circulating online of Iraqi prisoners in situations of torture. There's a very famous, very haunting image of a man covered in a hood that is sort of reminiscent of Ku Klux Klan, except that this was a black hood, and he was suspended and he was naked. And there were many other photographs that were taken of the torture of Iraqi prisoners. And what was so compelling about this image for me?
May I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
I'm very sorry. We seem to only be seeing the title, the main title of the webinar. You are able to share with us your desktop if you have any visuals that you'd like to share with us.
I do have them. I see the sign saying show my screen. I haven't moved on to that yet.
Oh, okay.
But I will.
Okay. So we're just keeping the suspense alive.
Yes.
A few comments from our participants saying that they can't see anything and they're worried that they're missing out on these powerful visuals.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to start showing you my, I hope you can see something which is black and says Tactical Technology Collective, and then now you see something about the title of the book. Do you see that?
We can see that.
Okay, and I hope it's not other things that are on my computer.
No.
Just joking. I've shut down everything else.
Do not worry.
Okay, so just to finish up on the Abu Ghraib, what I thought was actually quite interesting about that was these visuals were photographs taken with a point-and-shoot camera, maybe even a mobile phone. They were all taken by people who were employed in the U.S. Army. These are not visual artists or activists at all, but it was at a time when we were seeing how it became possible for individuals to take images that could move and change the world. And while Abu Ghraib is a is a more haunting example. I think it's the sort of example we don't think of very often, and I think that it's actually an example that I've heard used in the context to talk about how pretty much anyone can pick up a device today and make images and share them with the world. However, what we have talked about in our book, Visualizing Information for Advocacy, is about a more thoughtful process. And we hope that through this book we can introduce this sort of thoughtfulness into advocacy campaigns, because actually visuals are very hard to work with. And there's a saying in English that, a picture speaks 1,000 words. But through the writing of this book, I've come to realize that that's probably rubbish, because I think visuals perhaps maybe they don't speak in words, maybe they don't speak in 1,000 words, and I think visuals have an entirely unique language of their own and speak in a certain register, which sometimes I think for advocacy groups is quite difficult to appreciate. I think artists and designers are perhaps schooled in the visual much more, and as an NGO that works across these different disciplines and communities, we hope to sort of do some of that bridging and share those languages. So in a sense, maybe the metaphor is not that we are a bridge, but that perhaps we are linguists, and we're trying to introduce different languages to the communities we work with. So I'll start with one of the examples that is in the book to try and introduce some of the principles that the book is about and that we believe visual advocacy is about. So the first is, I think you can probably see these two images. Now they're of spectacles. One image shows a dense mass of spectacle frames, and this was taken from an exhibition at Auschwitz. And the image on the left is of only 12 spectacles, and this was created by a designer called Naomi Teresa Salomon, and they're based on 12 spectacles from the survivors of Buchenwald concentration camp. And what's really interesting and powerful about this example is that they're both about the same thing. They're about the Holocaust, and they choose the same subject matter. They choose spectacles. However, if you look at the images from Auschwitz, the dense mass, I think perhaps what comes to you is the fact that there were so many people who lost their lives, that it's difficult to sort of make out the detail. They're sort of unsorted. And yet, the numbers shock you. And if you actually do a Google search for this image, you'll see images of the whole installation. And you'll just see, like, they're all just piled together in a mass on a table. And that itself is quite powerful. However, when you look at the 12 images, what's done by the designer, what's interesting is that they're not complete. They're only half or half done. And, there are bits missing, there are gaps. And I think going from the mass, you suddenly realize that, oh, these are all actually individual lives, and I think the absences and the gaps sort of entreat you to look in and try to complete those stories and recognize that there are some details we will never know about people who were killed in the Holocaust, and this is an example that we use in the book to actually talk about visual presentation and the different things you can do by choosing two very different ways to present what is essentially the same kind of information. I think the other thing that we're seeing at the intersection of the visual and information and networks is this idea of evidence and evidence in the hands of citizens. And this forms a large part of our work. Over the years, we've been training activists and producing capacity building guides and material on this idea of information activism. And I think this image just sort of sums it up really well. And this sort of came out, I think, at the time of the Arab uprisings. And this is essentially what was happening. The world came to know about what was happening in the Arab region because you had individuals with digital recording devices in their hands. And I think this has sort of changed the game as far as activism goes. And another sort of related example is of how visuals like this, taken by individuals, taken by activists, were actually part of an advocacy campaign. This is an image from Bahrain, and it's basically a Google Earth image. It was taken via Google because citizens actually don't have this view of how the Bahraini royal family uses their wealth. So you had activists who very smartly used the technology available to zoom in and take photographs of where the Bahraini royal family's property. And what they did was they just put it in a PDF and they emailed the PDF. So very, very low tech resources were being used. And all they did was they circulated it and asked people to look at, they were just kind of exposing the evidence of what was there. Some commentators are saying now that this, which started in about 2006, was sort of bringing people together, bringing Bahraini activists together who were unhappy with the excesses of the ruling regime, and we know that what's happened, that in the last few years, that actually the crackdown in Bahrain has been perhaps one of the most brutal, and that's because the sort of community online has been talking more and more and unearthing evidence of what the people in power have been doing. And another way to think about evidence that's also circulating all around us is perhaps epitomized by this, which you see now, which is basically just a spreadsheet. And I don't know if you can see the details because perhaps it's the image is quite small. This is actually a spreadsheet of expenses by British MPs. And this sort of made big news a couple of years ago. I think it was around 2009 maybe, when there was evidence of how British MPs, what they were charging to the taxpayer. And it was not just kind of money that was due in the course of their work, but even their private expenses and things that they were claiming, entertainment expenses and such like. So this is another kind of evidence that's available today, in the form of a spreadsheet, and this is as powerful as video imagery or maps and satellite imagery to show what institutions and authorities are doing with the power vested in them. So, well, actually, before I come to that, so these are just some of the examples we've talked about in the book to start giving a framework to talking about the visual. Any visual used in advocacy is not just a picture, but I think it resonates with and builds off the technologies and platforms that activists need and use for their campaigns, the most relevant technologies and platforms. I think it's about, having a certain kind of visual language and visual design and aesthetic. It's also about networks and how you want something to proliferate and how you want to be able to create influence. So I think these examples were just sort of to give you a sense of where we're coming from. And to go more specifically to the book, what we've done in visualizing information for advocacy is, we did a lot of workshops and interviewed a lot of people over about 2 or 3 years, people who are creating visual advocacy campaigns, really good visual advocacy campaigns. And we've come up with a framework to try and explain how different visuals work. And I mean, I've been working in NGOs since I was 17, and that's, many, many, many years. And I feel like this is the first time I've seen, the work of visual sort of represented in this way. And I know it's really spoke to me as somebody who's worked in advocacy and activism. So you'll see over the next few minutes as I take you through examples how each of these play out and work. So the first one is called Get the Idea. And this is about visuals that grab attention and provoke you to start engaging with an issue. The second one is something that we call Get the Picture, and this is about sort of crafting a narrative that uses more data and more information and sort of draws you into the story a little bit more. And the third is what we call Get the Detail, which is a little bit like the spreadsheet that I just showed earlier, which is about giving a whole lot of information to individuals and letting them kind of get into it and arrive at their own conclusions. because I think that's the other thing that's happening now, that with people being online and having access to a lot of information and technology themselves, I think communities can be mobilized around being able to sort through information and make sense of it themselves. So, okay. So I'm just wondering at this point if I can just do a quick check of two things. One, am I speaking too fast? Do I need to slow down? Because I am accused of this from time to time. The other is if people have questions, want me to go over anything, if you could let Andrea know, and if not, then we'll just kind of move into the rest. How are we doing, Andrea?
We are doing very well. We haven't received any major complaint about the speed. We don't have any questions for the time being, so you can go right ahead. I will interrupt you if anything happens. Okay?
Okay. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Okay, so of course, I think I showed you the URL earlier, visualizing.advocacy.org, and hopefully many of you will go out and get a copy of the book. We will also be putting it online soon because I know we've been getting a lot of demand. Right now, we only have some sort of sample chapters up. So through this presentation, I'll take you through some of what we have in the book. So the first section is what we call Get the Idea. And this is to sort of get the idea kinds of visuals arrest people through strong emotions by provoking, by capturing their attention, by provoking curiosity, anger, humor, those sorts of gut reactions, as it were. So one of the examples that we have is this, and Greenpeace is actually noted for their amazing visual advocacy campaigns. We have quite a few Greenpeace examples in the book. And so as you see, there's very little text, but there's an image that just the way that it's taken sort of makes you kind of crack a smile. You know exactly what this is about. Very, very simple image. Here's another one that we use in workshops a great deal because this evokes a lot of very heated reactions. Again, you'll see very little text but very strong images. This is a campaign run by Amnesty International Sweden, and it's about female genital mutilation. And you've got 3 different roses sewn up in 3 different ways. I think even if you don't know about the details of female genital mutilation, that there are actually 3 different kinds, this is still very arresting because it immediately makes you think about what the flowers mean. And I think it's a very clever use of metaphors because many people have this association with flowers. However, we've shown this particular example to women's rights activists. We've shown it to women's rights activists in East Africa where FGM is practiced, and we've shown it in many other parts of the world. I know that there are many activists who have been quite annoyed with the use of this metaphor, and some have said to us, what, are women supposed to be like flowers? Are women's genitals supposed to be like flowers and sort of delicate? And they haven't liked that sort of use of the metaphor. Other people have been very moved by it and thought that it was very clever and interesting. And I think a point is not necessarily to judge if something is good or not, but to recognize also where does a visual come from? Who's made it? There's an entire politics to the fact that this is a campaign done by Amnesty International Sweden to send a particular sort of message. And this is a thread that runs through the whole book, kind of looking at understanding how visuals come to be. And I actually think this is really clever because it generates that sort of conversation, because it sort of draws you in, makes you ask questions about what it's about. And in the book we have many, many more such examples. In the interest of time, I'm not going to actually go through them all. I'm going to move on actually to the next section which we call Get the Picture. And like I said, Get the Picture is a little bit more, there's a little bit more information. It's not just one strong visual and a little bit of text. Get the Picture is about giving the viewer more of a journey through data and information, and some of the things that we commonly consider to be kind of get the picture sorts of visuals are information graphics, which are very popular right now, and maps. And I'm going to, oh, this image does not show. Okay. Ooh, okay, well, maybe I'll just move on to this one then, and then try and see if I can pull up the first one, which I was showed. Okay, so this is an example that's in the book, and it's what we call kind of about scaling meaningfully. This is an example by the BBC and a design company called Berg. And what they did in this was really interesting. This was at the time of the floods in Pakistan, and it was a very simple sort of map. You could just type in your UK postcode, and what it did was it mapped the area devastated by floods in Pakistan over the UK and Europe. So what it essentially did was it made a disaster thousands of kilometers away suddenly feel personal, and suddenly feel real. And they used very simple technology that's widely available, and kind of put it in a nice sort of format and website. And then of course there was more information that you could get about the floods, how it happened, what they're doing, how many people were affected, and so on. So there's a little bit more. This kind of homepage was really just the hook, I think, to get people into it. And they've done this across many other disasters and global events. We just picked up the screenshot of the floods in Pakistan, but we kind of, there are many more on the website that you can look at. And okay, I'm going to try and find the other example. And for that, I'm just going to stop showing my screen for a second, so just give me a moment.
All right, very well. If anybody has questions in the meantime, please feel free to send them over to us. If you have any doubts about what's been said, any reactions, we would love to know what you think. So feel free to send them over to us while Maya is looking for the missing picture.
This is weird.
And if Maya, you've asked, you've mentioned that any participants can get the book. How can they do that? What's the best way to reach out to you and get a copy of the book?
Okay, well, the best way to actually reach out and get a copy of the book is right now to go and place an order via the website that I showed, visualizingadvocacy.org. So there's a link there, which many links you'll see to get the book. And the books are being dispatched from Bangalore, where we got it printed. Bangalore is where we've had an office for the last 5 or 6 years, and we do all of our print production from here. So we will dispatch it. Should take you about 2 weeks or so. We're soon going to have a system on Amazon to be able to for people to get copies. We're also going to have it online. But immediately in the next few days, if you want to get it, placing an order online is best.
All right, thank you very much. We do have a question while you're still, I don't know if you've been able to recuperate this picture.
I haven't actually, for some reason it's not showing, so I'm going to move on. And it's unfortunate I can't show any more examples right now, but let's take the question anyway.
I do have, the question is, as an activist, do you think that when you use visuals, you run a bigger risk that your message is misunderstood, that you offend people compared to a verbal campaign?
I think that that's definitely a risk. We actually have a whole section in each chapter which sort of looks at what are the risks or the hazards of actually working with visuals. And in some cases, I don't think just offense is the problem, but you could have, or not just offense or people misunderstanding, but you can also start using very tired metaphors or things that actually make that people are already desensitized to. So yesterday when I was traveling back from Berlin, I kind of smiled when I saw one of the ads that was flashing on the Air Berlin flight. And it was about global warming, and it said that, in 30 years the ice caps are going to melt, there's going to be no water left, and they showed sort of this one solitary small piece of ice floating on the water, and then they showed you what lies beneath the surface, because we know that icebergs and glaciers, 90% is below water. What they showed you the view of what is below, and what is below was a polar bear, and the polar bear was carrying this little piece of ice on its back. And that's the reason why I actually smiled, because I can remember from the Rio conference in the 1990, I think it was, which was a big, important environmental conference. Since then, the polar bear, the image of the polar bear is everywhere, and it's always connected with global warming. And I don't know if it moves us anymore. I don't know if it actually kind of inspires us to think about or act or change our behavior or anything like that as far as the environment goes. So I think there's a number of different kinds of risks, and this is where looking at your audience and understanding your audience a little bit better, what kind of visual narratives they've been used to, what's in vogue, what's old, what is the pulse of people. So I think that's a very valid question, and that risk is absolutely there.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. We are still seeing the main screen, so we want to go back to the...
Now I found the image. It is, however, not in the PDF I was using. I'm going to show you this and hope that... Can you see this thing called Make Something Personal? It should be like a PowerPoint screen that you see.
Yes.
You see that? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so Make Something Personal is another sort of example from the Get the Picture series, and the reason I've chosen this is because it's quite a radical departure from a lot of maps and infographics, which I will talk about later, and which you'll see in the book and which you see in the world around you. This is an example I love because it uses this idea of portraiture, and this is a work of art by a Palestinian artist called Majdi Hadid. It's featured in a book called The Subjective Atlas of Palestine, and it's called The Documents I Need to Travel Outside of Palestine. And one of the biggest issues, I think, for Palestinians is not just, statelessness, but just the everyday mobility is an issue. So, what he's done is he's just laid out every single bit of paperwork that he needs, from the different passports to entry permits, exit permits, bus tickets, baggage tags, boarding cards, and so on, to be able to make a journey. And I think to many of us who, well, some of us pass through borders very easily, you kind of forget what it actually means, that, something which is like a huge struggle, which has been around for decades, for more than 60 years, actually has relevance to the life of an individual, and he can show that. So I'm going to just go back to my PDF. Can you see this now? You go back to, can you see Get the Details now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, super. So I'm going to the third section, which is Get the Details. We already did Get the Idea and Get the Picture. So Get the Details is about really giving people everything, giving them the density and the depth of the data that you have out there. And this is a quote by an artist called Trevor Paglen, and I don't know if you can read it, so I'm going to read it out. And what he says is, if you're interested in an industrial plant and you think that there are environmental crimes being committed there, you're going to have a very hard time turning up at the front door and asking and seeing if they let you come in and tell you whatever crimes they're doing. But what you can do is assume that if they're dealing with toxic chemicals, and there's a good chance they have a bad safety record, so you can go to the local fire department and ask if there are any documented incidences of a hazmat response. In other words, have there been any instances where you've been called to anything to do with hazardous waste? So you start to build up evidence around the thing that you are looking at when you can't look at it directly. And this is something that we refer to as the art of seeing sideways. And Trevor Paglen is one of those artists who's very good at doing this, also because the issues that he works on are cloaked in secrecy. So whether it's about US defense installations or spying and surveillance and secrecy, rendition flights, these are issues that somebody like an artist like him cannot look at directly. Not everybody uses this approach, but I think in Get the Details, this is what people are doing when they are using a lot of information, but creating very interesting sort of stories for you to enter that, enter that information too. So this is one example by a group. It's called I Love Mountains. It's by a group from the state called the US, the United States, called Appalachian Voices. And what's happening, what has been happening in the Appalachian Mountains for I think at least a decade now is what they call just mountaintop removal. They just basically blast the entire top of a mountain to reveal the coal beneath. And this, of course, creates a lot of damage to the surrounding environment and, flora and fauna and all of that. So what Appalachian Voices did is they created this website where you could put in your US postcode and look at where energy is coming from to power your house. So this screenshot that we've used here is actually, we put in the pin code for the White House, and we looked at what the website revealed to us. It shows where power and energy for the White House is coming from, and the connection tool basically stitches together 6 different public data sets that establish the following facts: the location of your house, or in this case the White House, the company that runs the electricity grid supplying that house, the coal-fired power stations that supply electricity to that company and grid, the sources of coal for those power stations and the companies that run them, and then the sources of coal in the US, and in this case, coal from mountaintop removal in Appalachia. So they've taken data that's publicly available, that's out there, but they've kind of stitched it together in a very compelling and really engaging sort of format. I think I Love Mountains is one of those projects that has really been very influential in the conversation around mountaintop destruction in the US, and now you've got a big movement around fracking and tar sands, and I think these are all groups that kind of made those conversations possible. Another great example is called what we call Fill in the Gaps. This is a digital monument to Dutch Jewish people who lost their lives in the Second World War during the Holocaust. And this is a screenshot of the homepage, and each one of those little pixels represents somebody about whom information is not known. So they did something very interesting with the absences of information. They made it the main part of their campaign. They invite viewers to actually fill in information. So if you actually click on one of those pixels, you may come up with a screen that tells you who that person is about. So in the book, we've kind of, we've talked about one of those examples, let's say Mr. Abraham Goud, and you have details about where he's from, where he lived, and information that's known about him. There are also things that are not known about Mr. Abraham Goud. So somebody looking at the website, if you have information about him or his family, you can actually enter that in. And I think that what's really interesting about this example is that it uses something that that is very much a part of the way the internet works today, is that information needs to be verified. Information is not always out there when we need it. We have to collect it from different places. Things are sometimes incomplete. So that's another example of Get the Details. And then I just have, I think, one more example that I'm going to end with. Yes, I'm going to end with this one. And this is the work of a Chinese artist called Ai Weiwei, very celebrated right now, and I think many people know him. And I like this example because it talks about how creating really compelling visual advocacy is not only just the preserve of NGOs or activists, but it's truly something that artists can also be involved with, visual designers, also people who have nothing to do with these fields. When you have a great idea, can come up with a beautiful way to represent something. So this is a picture taken of Ai Weiwei in front of excuse me, in front of very simple printout of the names of more than 5,000 children who were killed in an earthquake in Sichuan province of China in 2008. And what happened was the earthquake destroyed a lot of schools. It happened during the day, it destroyed a lot of schools, and these schools were very poorly constructed, well, because of construction and corruption, because they used very poor construction materials. And these came to be known as tofu skin schools because, of the poor and shoddy construction. The Chinese government was also covering up anything to do with the deaths of these children. And I was so moved by this, sort of blanket on information, but also just the horror of it, that with about 50 volunteers over a year, he went around from family to family just collecting the names of children who died. And sometimes, that is sometimes all that parents want to know, the sort of recognition that, yes, this happened to my child. And what is so interesting is that it's just a very simple printout. And if you have to think about how long does it take to actually read the names of these children, you sort of become drawn into the data in a very physical and I think very moving sort of way. And this eventually went on to become a big exhibition that he did in the Kunsthalle in Munich, where he actually used a backpack, a child's school backpack, one for every child who lost his or her life in the earthquake. And it was based on data in a spreadsheet that they compiled in a sort of research exercise. So I'm going to actually end there, and I'm happy to, I think we can take some questions if you have them now. If not, we can move on to, I think, the next part where Gabby will take over. How are we doing, Andrea? Any questions or?
No, we haven't received anything. I think the videos were really powerful. Anybody, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them over to me. And we can go on with Gabby if you want to. I can.
So I think that. Yeah, I think that that's fine. If nobody has questions right now, we can still see what happens at the end to Gabby then.
Great, thanks Maya, that was great. Andrea, how long do we have left until the end of the webinar? Because I know we started a few minutes late.
We have at least another 20 minutes, and then we'll go on to the final Q&A.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. So Maya talked about how visuals are used in advocacy work, and I wanted to talk about how it works in practice. So quite not going into the raw bones of how to create a data visualization, but definitely things to consider when looking at these visualizations. So for example, I'm just going to show you 3 visualizations. The first is, so it arrives on this landing page, and it's all about drone strikes since 2004 in Pakistan. So you skip on. And as you can see, there's a timeline that builds, and then a dashboard that grows at the top of all the deaths in Pakistan from drone attacks. And as each drone strikes, the dashboard moves from side to side. And so this builds up over time. And when you can actually click on each individual block to read more about them. So this has been an extremely popular visualization, and I wanted to show it to you because it is actually very complicated to make. And so this is very popular, but also you need to think about how this was made and what it would take to actually make something like this. The next one I'm going to show you, so these all fit into the latter part of the classifications that we came up with. So this is get the picture and get the detail. This next example is from the land matrix, which is a project that we produced that was an independent land monitoring initiative. So the idea here is that we have multiple entry points into the data. And when you click on one, you can see the visualization. It should start at the bottom. And you can see the transnational deals of land that occurred. So the idea is that the viewer would search the data themselves and to find their own story, to come to their own conclusion about land deals. And this third one I'll just briefly show you. It's called the Daily Bread. And this looks at where taxpayers' money goes in the UK. So the idea is that you select your salary. So let's say that's my salary. And you can see exactly where your tax will go. So out of my 70, I might make it more realistic, to 33,000, health is £9, defence is £2, and then you click on, and it will give you more detail into the different categorizations. So these are three quite complicated visualizations that have all been very popular, appearing in national newspapers, a lot of blogs, just extremely popular visualizations. And so people are seeing these visualizations and they're inspired by them and they want to do something similar. However, these visualizations take a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of capacity. So I forgot to launch the poll, sorry. So I'd like to just ask you a question. So I think we can launch the poll.
There we go.
Thank you.
I hope everybody can see it. And yes, people are starting to vote.
Great. So I think it should ask you if you've ever used a visualization in your work. I can't see the question on my screen.
The question is,
have you made a data visualization?
A data visualization.
Have you made a data visualization? So this could be, have you funded a data visualization as well as made one yourself?
And the results are in, and 69% of the participants seem to have made a data visualization before, while 31% of them haven't.
And any for the last option?
No.
Great.
Everybody seems to be with the concept.
So I wonder, for all the made a visualization or who haven't, if they count a pie chart as a visualization or a bar graph, because these are all visualizations, and these are all visualizations that people are using in reports and on websites. And also, data visualization is a buzzword nowadays, and people are getting really excited about it, about showing off data in an exciting way to reach people in a meaningful way. And so it's become quite an interesting topic for a lot of people. However, they see the snazzy visualizations I just showed you and want to create something similar. So I just want to talk to you quickly about actually what that entails to do. So at Tactical Tech, we have created data visualizations before and produced a number of them. The land matrix is one you just saw, and products of slavery is another one which can be seen here. And we also have an in-house design creative agency called Tactical Studios. And so we work just with advocacy groups on helping them work with their data. So usually advocacy groups and activists will come to us with a data set and ask us to help them visualize it and find a story and work with them to represent it in an interesting way. But as I mentioned, good data visualizations take time, and they take time because you're finding the story, as I'm sure a lot of people will tell you, is the hardest part of creating a good data visualization. It's not easy to find a good story, and usually if people collect a lot of data, then they want to show it all off at the same time because it was normally an arduous task to do it. However, it's more of an impactful story if you can select the key message that you want your chosen audience to see, and it takes time to find that key story. good data visualizations take money. Unless you have a design team in-house who are able to design a visualization, maybe do some coding, put it on a website, you'll have to search for other agencies that will do this for you, and that takes money. And the third is capacity. So similarly to the in-house staffing issues, capacity, so someone that has an idea, finds a story in the data, knows how to clean data sets, and then can visualize the data, and this normally isn't the same person. So at Tactical Tech, what we try and do is to build capacity with NGOs and with advocacy groups. So I'm just going to show you how we do that. So the guide originally came about, so the guide's been in production for the last 2 years, and it came about from this website, Drawing by Numbers. It's a website we started, I think, in 2010. And so we have, similarly to the guide, some design notes and then visualization tools. So this got upgrade to what is now visualizing information for advocacy. And this is the website that Maya was referring me to. This is where you can get the book, whoever's interested. So on here, we've provided links to visualization tools. Just loading. So here we provided quite in-depth critical reviews of free and open source data visualization tools that advocates and NGO groups could use, and kind of a how-to or directing people to a how-to of using these tools. And the third capacity building product that we made is the School of Data, which is an Open Knowledge Foundation initiative that we worked with them and created a course called A Gentle Introduction to Data Cleaning. And so this is, as the title suggests, very gentle, and it has, I think, 5 modules contained within it, all about cleaning data and why cleaning data is important. So kind of the nuts and bolts of your data before you can then visualize it. So let me just move on to my... So for us, as tactical studios or as Tactical Tech, when we're creating a visualization for another organization, we work very closely with the organization who collected the data, as they obviously know it best. We write quite a clear design brief, then we find the right designer, and then we set a clear deadline and a budget and try and keep to both of those things. Each of these steps, and so at the end of the book, after get the idea, get the picture, get the detail, at the end of the book we discuss how to work with designers. So it goes into detail of what to include in your design brief, how do you find the right designer, how do you stay on budget, pitfalls that you may come across, and how to resolve those issues that you may have. So each of these steps is very important when you're working with an outside design agency. I just wanted to talk about a project. And so just in the last note of that, we always say that production's a process, because we have a very iterative process in our constructions of data, so that they go through a lot of changes, but normally the changes lead to something that's great at the end of it. So this is also under the time bracket. So when we were talking to Andrea about the type of people that might be interested in this webinar, he said that it would mainly be people from Europe or working in Europe. So we wanted to talk about a project that we're doing called the Think Tanks Project. And the project is working with a range of think tanks who have collected data on political extremism and intolerance.
I lost you for a second there, sorry.
And we wanted to do this project is because for their ability quantitative or using data, but maybe not.
Gabby, we are losing you slightly. We're afraid that it's due to your internet connection.
Oh no.
Okay,
Yeah.
now
Maybe shut down things if you're running other things in the background.
That would be a very good idea. Gabby, you're still with us.
Is this better?
Yes, we can hear you again.
Can you?
Oh, you're still breaking up for us. I am going to, while we try and solve. Are you back with us? Hello, Gabby. Maya, I'm going to take the opportunity while
Any better?
Slightly. Can you try and?
Not really.
We're still losing you a little bit. I do have a couple of questions in the meantime as we as you try and maybe turn off a few of the applications that you have on your computer. You seem to have struck a note as you started speaking about cost for these kind of exercises. And a few of the people in our audience have started to send questions about how much these things could really cost and what the real, what are the key cost factors in running this kind of project, for example. Maya,
Gabby?
We can't hear Gabby anymore. Gabby.
Okay. So maybe I'll just jump in then.
Please.
Since Gabby's just gone offline, I guess, or having trouble. So I think the cost factors are things like, well, first of all, you can't just say that, this is how much something's going to cost, because it depends, of course, on how extensive something is or how detailed. But I think the things to look at is from an NGO perspective or advocacy group perspective, I think you need to make sure that your data is in the right, your data is clean, that your data is accessible. And so with the think tanks project that we're working on, this is all data from research groups, policy groups, and think tanks based in Europe, and their bread and butter, and most people there are researchers. So the data is all fine. The data is actually very good data, and it's been collected rigorously, and so on and so forth. So, but many NGOs don't have that, and sometimes they may want to do visual campaigns, or they've said to a funder or something that we will do a visual campaign, and then they realize that their data is in a terrible state and they need help with that. So sometimes having, you may need to look at kind of a data consultant, or somebody who can help figure out the data. I think there needs to be, there's kind of production costs around things like, is it going to be an interactive website that's online? Large data sets often need relational databases that are best handled online. These sorts of designers and developers are not cheap. So that's the sort of, price factor to look at. If you have an illustrator or a visual artist, somebody who's creating something that is less data heavy, maybe about photography, that's, or some other kind of visual forms, those have their own cost. The digital and online tend to be more expensive. I think looking at somebody who's managing the whole process, and this is something we often try to tell people who come to Tactical Studios, that the time for the person who's going to manage the project and bring all of these different people in, the data person, and as Gabby was saying, the data person, the visual person, the developer, there has to be somebody who has a creative vision and who's going to manage the entire process. So it really is a team effort to do this. So I think that looking at that management is also important. And then there's actuals like, are you going to be printing this? If so, then there's cost associated with that. Are you going to be, putting this out online? That's free, but there may be other costs with, there may be other kinds of hidden costs. And this, a good developer will let you know. And we always recommend that, we try to get people who are well matched. Certain kinds of developers and designers know how to work with certain kinds of data and information. So I think that those are sort of the main cost factors and issues. And then there's things like how long is this going to be around? How far do you need it to go? I mean, this is all in the sort of strategy phase where you think about, why are we making visuals? What is it for? How much, who's the audience? And that pre-production phase actually takes, it's all people's time at the end of the day. So that's something that has to be budgeted in for as well.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you
I
very much.
can follow that up with details. Oh, Gabby's back. Okay.
Gabby, are you back?
Sorry, thanks, Maya.
Okay.
I heard all of that.
Add to that, please do. Yeah.
Gabby.
No, it was perfect.
We have another 5 minutes, and then we'd like to wrap up. We have another question coming up. So the floor is yours again for another 5 minutes, if you don't mind.
Great, sorry about that. So the project that I wanted to talk about is that we're working with a range of think tanks who have collected data on political extremism and intolerance across Europe. And as Maya said, think tanks' bread and butter is collecting data. They're really good at it, really good at 60-page reports, but sometimes not always the best at showing it off. So we were encouraging these think tanks to think more creatively about presenting their data, so get away from these huge reports and to make something a bit more digestible, and to communicate their information to perhaps newer audiences outside of the policy realm. So the three think tanks that we're working with is Demos, RAND, and Political Capital in Hungary. And each three have different data, but still on intolerance in Western Europe. And each three of them are doing have gone for different visualization techniques. And this is a process that they came to through working with us and talking about the story that they wanted to show and the platform that they and the output that they wanted to have. So I just wanted to say what these three are doing as a source of inspiration for any of you working with similar data. Demos is creating an interactive website that uses qualitative data. So they have collected over 8,000 quotes from people on why they support extremist parties, and to find a way to show off 8,000 daunting task. But what we're doing is using the quotes as an entry point to understanding the issue. So the viewer will click on the quote, and then you would get information on who said it, which country they were from, issues going on in that country. The political capital visualization is a 2-minute animation that looks critically at the views of anti-Semitism in Hungary. So it's for a very broad audience. They wanted to show off this data they collected on anti-Semitism to as many people as possible. The RAND visualization is a traditional executive infographic on a report that they wrote on intolerance in Western Europe.
We're going to interrupt you for 1 second. Do you think you'll be able to show us again your slides?
All of these.
Hello, Gabby. Sorry, we lost you again.
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm very sorry for interrupting. We were just wondering.
I'm sorry, I've nearly finished.
Share the screen with us again, so that we could see your the visual.
Sorry. Let me see. Is this working?
We are not seeing. We're still seeing the main screen of the.
Okay, I
there
think
you
I've
go.
done it.
Now we can.
So I'm very sorry with all of the phase, so they will be finished in the next month to 6 weeks, and we can't show any of the drafts as of yet. But I wanted to tell you about the project so that you could see what other organizations are thinking of doing with their data that they traditionally wouldn't do. And the lessons learned at this stage have been how hard it is to find a story and the angle to communicate, and which bits to leave out, because a lot of this data was collected and it was very arduous for a lot of these think tanks, and to leave data out for them could be quite painful. But for the but for the greater goal that they wanted to communicate, it was a necessary part. So I think that's what I wanted to say. I have more information, and I don't know if we can send this around later to participants about if you wanted to actually design a visualization yourself, then what are some of the basic tools that you could use, and some of the tutorial sites you might want to use. So I've mentioned them later on, and so maybe we can send around the...
That would be perfect. That would be perfect. We'll be sending them, we'll be sending all participants all of this information. We are running out of time, but I do have one question that I would like to ask you both, if possible. And it comes from our audience, and they are interested in knowing if you have an example, either in your book or here already on your slides, of a very effective and successful visualization campaign that has actually managed to change an advocacy campaign. Can you give us any examples? And if you are able, and in what way, to actually evaluate how these visualization campaigns then actually work, because they do seem very expensive, as you pointed out. So how do you evaluate them?
Well, I will say that first of all, we need to even look at how we assess what makes a successful campaign, and to also recognize that we're not saying that one information graphic or one campaign is going to change the world. We know that to actually make significant change, it takes a number of campaigns over time. And the reason we kind of got into visuals was because this was a way to move away from the 60-page report syndrome, where NGOs and advocacy groups have a great deal of information and just don't know how to present it. And visuals can make campaigning much stronger. And this became a sort of area of interest for us, and which is why we went into it. Now, I think that, one of the examples I mentioned of the I Love Mountains, the Appalachian Voices, I think the environmental campaigning movement led by Greenpeace and a number of others, I think they've been really good at developing visual advocacy campaigns. And if you just think back to all of the visual campaigns that you've seen, and I think you will find that there's a lot around the environment that I think has been very successful. And this hasn't just happened, yesterday. This has sort of been going on for 20 or 25 years. So I think it's important to look at how would we assess change that has been made, within a particular thematic area or issue. So, you can't compare the environment with, let's say, female genital mutilation, or something like that. And some things don't work with advocacy campaigns, visual advocacy campaigns like FGM. However, a visual advocacy campaign around FGM may help raise money and bring the issue to the attention of groups who can influence policy. So I think that, yes, they do take money to do, but it's about looking at how does an advocacy group work it into their larger strategy. How is it part of something bigger they're trying to do? Similarly, I think around Palestine, it's really interesting. I was just looking at an archive of posters around Palestine, or similarly for apartheid. These things have supplemented and complemented, information. Sometimes information needs to be in a spreadsheet, and there's no getting around that. Sometimes it needs to be in a report. So this work is about trying to give NGOs alternatives and options to think about, how they want to build their advocacy over time.
Okay.
Do you want
Thank
to
you
add
very
anything
much.
to that, Gabby?
The only thing I did want to add is this is very much on top of what Maya said, but there are a few ways to assess the impact of the visualizations. But I think what Maya is saying is much more important. The ways that you can assess it also, if you want to look at the metrics of your website, you want to look at how many hits it's getting, the press coverage that issue might not have received without such a visualization. there's examples that Maya and I were in Jordan last week, and there's a group called Visualizing Palestine, and they were asked the same question, and they said that they measure impact through these kind of metrics, but also they referenced a visualization they did in documenting a hunger strike, and they said after they made this visualization of a hunger strike, what happens to you with a hunger strike, the prisoner was freed, and they referenced that to this visualization of bringing it to people's attention. So I think assessing impact is very difficult in some ways, but in other ways there have been examples.
All right, thank you very much. I have to close. We're really drawing to an end. There is one last question about the possibility of reviewing this webinar, and by all means, yes, the webinar has been recorded, and it will be available on the EFC's YouTube channel. So if you log on to YouTube and you look for European Foundation Center, you will be able to see it. So thank you very much for talking to us, Gabby and Maya. Thank you very much for this very interesting webinar. Thank you very much to everybody for participating. Just one last reminder, this is only the first of the Wednesday webinar series. We hope you'll be able to join us again. Our next webinar will be taking place on the 5th of March, same time, and it will focus on the new funding programs, the new European funding programs between 2014 and 2020. So thank you very much. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Maya. And we hope to have you with us next month.
Thanks a lot.
Great, thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks.